or I think there's an agreement taking place, or you think there's an agreement taking place. Every single agreement opportunity is an opportunity to increase or decrease trust.
Welcome to Season 3 of Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations, with your host, Executive Leadership Coach and CEO of the Granger Network, Kari Granger, and me, Paul Adams, CEO of Sound Financial Group. This season focuses on trust. This is episode 45, setting the stage for a trust culture.
Welcome back to Leadership Impact. Today I want to talk about one of the biggest trust culprits, and that is our toleration of sloppy agreements and incomplete communication. How about that?
I think that's just nails what we're going to cover. And one of the things I think people forget is we're in agreements all the time. We have agreements we've made implicitly, explicitly, but too often, if you checked in with two people in a corporate environment after a conversation and what they both agreed to, you would get two different agreements.
It leads to pretty negative interpretations of each other, negative assessments of each other. And of course, that then leads to blame and defensiveness and frustration and resentment, all these things that block trust, right? And then we start to attribute characteristics like Paul just is, he never completes his promises, when actually we never had a true, complete agreement up front.
What does it look like? So if two people are talking, they're having a conversation about, hey, we're going to initiate this project inside of the enterprise. What's a way that two people in that interaction, we got multiple people inside many organizations listening to this podcast at the same time, and they're going to talk to each other later today. And there's going to be an agreement-ish on the table, the traditional way people do agreements, which is we talk about it, talk about what could possibly come out of it. How do we transition in an actual conversation to what do we both agree to?
Yeah, that's really great. And, for our listeners, I think we did an episode like this in our season 2 on accountability as well. Probably will have said different things, but that's another good reference place. One of the things, Paul, that I do in any interaction is I try to picture who's going to do what and by when. That's the first thing I try to picture. And if I can't picture that clarity, then I know I got to ask the question, right? So if we're having a conversation, we say, yes, I love that idea. Let's do offer, free webinars to our clients once a week. Oh, and we could do it on moods, and we could do it kind of like a podcast, but we could do it on all these things. Boy, what a great idea. Okay, now I got to start to picture who's going to do what and by when. And I can see already there's no agreement. There's just enthusiasm. So how I might transition into that is, okay, what actions do we need to take, and who are the right people to take those actions?
And you'll just say that.
Yeah.
What actions do we need to take? And who are the right people to take those actions?
Or, in our firm, we use something called an action commitment form. And I always like that because it's like a structure for people. And it says, okay, now I got to fill out this form. So who's doing what? This is the form's fault.
Yes.
But it really is, I just have to picture like who's going to do what. And so I'll ask, I'll say, okay, so is anybody expecting me to take action out of this? Because I know that I'm not clear. I'm excited about the idea, but I'm not clear on who's doing what and by when. So could we take a second and just clarify that?
What I love about the first version you gave of how to bring it up is it goes right back to your coaching around curiosity. Like, I love this idea. If we were to implement this, who has to do what to be the best people to do it, and by when do they need to get it done by? Leaves it all in question, brings curiosity in the group to figure it out, as opposed to, I know I've done it in a way that sounds very clunky, which is who's going to do what here before we're done. And it can show up very clunky versus the curiosity
yes,
that you gave. I love that.
Yeah. And I think even keeping in mind what we're going to accomplish together. Oh, I am so excited about this. Who's the best person to take what action and by when? Or you could say, who's willing to take what action and by when? So either way, I'm moving it. I have to know that when there's a possibility, that doesn't mean that there's an agreement, right? Possibility agreement, vision agreement, ambition agreement, two totally different things. So I want to ensure that there's a solid agreement. So who, what, by when, but then there's a really important thing when it comes to trust. And that's this domain of, successful criteria, right? So to what condition, to what degree, to what criteria, to what standard? So, I'll put together the content for this webinar. Great. Now, I'm going to try to picture what that looks like. So I might say, okay, and when you're putting the content together, are you going to, take it all the way through to the PowerPoint? Or were you thinking you just do kind of like a couple bullet points? Because I know when I say I'm putting together content, I'm going to take it all the way through. The slides are going to look amazing. And then I also know some of the people I work with, when they're thinking they're going to do content, they're just going to kind of have a rough idea in their head. And then they're going to, put a couple bullet points on a piece of scratch paper. Right. So we live, even that part is, what are we actually agreeing to? So we've got the who is doing what, by when, and according to what standard or criteria.
And I've got to jump in because I think what this can seem like, okay, that seems like a good tip, Kari, we could probably do that. But I see inside many organizations that people could be listening to this and not be totally clear on how agreements actually create trust. So the other side is, just picture the countless times we've all experienced somebody thinking they'd committed to something and they deliver it, but they deliver it later than what you thought it should be by, or they deliver it in a different format than what you thought it should be by. And this does a few things. One, it doesn't allow people to create trust because it's sometimes ends up as random, that the result that came back ended up as the thing somebody actually desired. Like it's a coincidence that it worked out, not because anybody had the agreements. Mm-hmm. So as a result, we're not giving people in our subconscious, we're not giving them full credit for completing on it, even if they happen to hit the mark, because we didn't have the clear agreement hurdle they could hit. And then we go right back to cordial hypocrisy and the idea of, oh, hey, thanks so much for getting that to me, but can you make this modification or that modification? And all the times we go back and forth and do that. In fact, I would challenge many of you, probably 25% of your emails in your inbox right now are as a result of agreements not being as clear as they could have been originally, people delivering maybe not the results you wanted, but they're delivering stuff to you. And then you're having to now produce the agreement in the creation of whatever the thing was that was supposed to get done. So I want everybody to notice how wildly inefficient we can be, how much less powerful we can be, and how much we can be a bit disturbed with our coworkers because we didn't get a chance to even build trust by giving someone the chance.
It's so good what you're saying.
Yep. Here's what I need, by when, how it should look, and give them the chance to just absolutely excel at that. With that, let's just take a short pause for an important message from the Granger Network.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay, and I work at the Granger Network. So many people think of the human parts of us, our moods and feelings and personalities, as something to be handled, controlled, set aside in the name of results. But we believe the very opposite is true. Those messy human parts of us, they don't knock us off the path to performance. They are the path. This is what we dedicate our lives to, putting high-performing leaders on the path to truly game-changing leadership by mastering what makes us human. One of the ways we do that is through one-on-one coaching. In the uncertainty of the coronavirus pandemic, this has been a huge support for our clients. If you're a leader looking to navigate that uncertainty, reach out to us on our website, grangernetwork.com, and we'll explore possibilities with you. If coaching isn't your thing, we've got tons of free content on our website as well. So head to grangernetwork.com and let's continue the conversation.
And with that, let's jump back to our episode.
And, some of us who have a tendency to do things on our own, like, oh, it's just easier if I do this on my own, or see, look, they didn't even produce what I needed anyway. I'm just going to do it on my own, right? Maybe that's a function of your not putting the effort in ahead of time to create a great agreement, a complete agreement that really sets people up for success. Right. So I see that with me all the time when I'm going so fast from thing to thing. I just remembered, something that happened a few months ago with one of my colleagues. And, we're a small business and we're growing. So we're starting to need to put certain things in place. And one of the things we decided to put in place was an employee handbook. So I asked one of my colleagues to actually it was her idea, we need to put together an employee handbook. I said, great, let's do that. Okay. I gave no specifications. No, we didn't take the time. It was actually lazy on my part. Take the time to really create those clear criteria for success, or you might call it conditions of satisfaction up front. So my colleague, she worked on this for like 3 months, and then it was ready. And I looked at it and I thought, no, this whole thing is wrong. This is for like a Fortune 500 company. This isn't for us at all. And I was in this position where I felt bad giving her that feedback because I could tell she worked on it. And all I could do is say, no, this whole thing is wrong. And, it wasn't her fault. It was the fact that we together, and me, a lot of it, did not sit down and make the effort on the front end to get clear on what is going to be a successful product here. So she had to do rework, or I look at it and want to do it by myself, right? And that's my tendency is, oh, here, I know how to do it. I'm just going to do it. Well, she could have if she was set up appropriately on the front end.
What I noticed is that when that came back, you almost go back to like what we talked about in episode 22 in season 2, which was that idea of you apologized. Like being able to say the mess up, the fess up, and the cleanup so that you have a chance to now get back what it is you want. Because now everybody listening to this has a whole bunch of air quotes agreements that are out there. And as a result of these air quotes agreements, then we don't get the chance to really have that appropriate apology on the back end and then re-request, because those are all outstanding. So even if you become an ace at this tomorrow, you probably have 6 months of worth of these agreements still coming back incomplete. And it's going to take holding the strategy at producing full agreements until you reach the point that inside your organization, just for you and the people you interact with, that you're actually able to complete those loops, those cycles of agreement that otherwise aren't happening.
Let's talk about this cycle. I love that you said those cycles of agreement. So that's another thing we often don't see is that agreements are a cycle. What does that mean? Okay, we've been talking on the front end, and then you brought in the back end, right? So what happens when we have an agreement? We need to complete that cycle. If I'm the performer, if I say, yeah, I'm going to do this, I either need to have accomplished it and letting the person that's counting on me know I accomplished it. So it does no good to accomplish something and the person who's waiting on it doesn't know. So I got to go back and say, hi, I completed that, like declare completion. Or if I'm not going to complete it, I need to account for my word, which go back and listen to, what was it, episode 22 you said, or 22? I'm going to let them know, speak up, fess up if I didn't do it, and then clean it up, say, by when I will and what I will. So I'm either going to declare completion or I'm going to account for my word. Or if you're making a request of me and I'm not going to take on that agreement, I need to be really clear, I'm not going to do it. So that also completes the agreement cycle. Is, Paul, you say, Kari, can you create this employee handbook? And I say, you know what, I'm not able to do that at this time. Let's take a look at that again in January. That completed one agreement cycle and that created a new agreement, which was, let's open this back up in January. But I need to complete that agreement cycle. Now, if I'm the receiver, I need to express satisfaction or dissatisfaction. So if I'm satisfied with the result, I need to say, thank you. Thank you. Good work. Even just received. I see you accomplish that. In other words, I need to signal there's a completion here, right? we had an agreement, you did the work, it's complete. Or if I'm dissatisfied, I need to signal, okay, I received that. That's not what I was looking for. Our criteria for success was not fulfilled. Can we create a new agreement? Can we go back? What you were just speaking about. So if we don't see agreements as a cycle that needs to be completed, the loop that needs to be closed, we just have these incomplete communications hanging out there, which decreases trust. If you're on my team and you consistently do work and I never come back to you and say thank you for that work, you're going to wonder, do I even see it? Are you acknowledged for the work you do? So I really like to look at agreements as a cycle to be completed.
Well, and I love that. I think this is something that be all too often forgotten. Most people are taught requests, declarations, all that. What I love about the distinction agreement is it gives us a chance that if I'm taking the request from you, Kari, I'm not just taking a request from you and I got to go do it. It is you and I. Both parties are producing said agreement. We got to cultivate the commitment that we're going to be in such that we both had the same understanding of that. But this word agreement, the distinction agreement, can exist for both of us. Even if you're the one saying, Paul, go do this, it gives me a chance to co-create that with you. And I can, even as I talk about it, I can feel how that would increase trust in an organization almost immediately. Just the idea, it's going to take months and months for agreements to complete sometimes, but the ability that we both shared an interpretation on the front end of what was actually going to happen allows us to now live in the same co-created future. Everybody's living in a future together, but often not the same one, because you were expecting me to deliver one thing and I'm preparing to deliver something else, and we don't find out about the breakdown in our future until I deliver it. So I think that this just ends up as a great gift to our audience, that they can have conversations about agreements to get things accomplished in the future rather than just requests or orders.
Yeah, and you have to remember too, even if you give somebody an order, that's actually still still a sloppy agreement, because you still want them to signal to you it was received and they know what to do and to what specifications and by when, right? So agreements are always two people coming together. And if we leave here just remembering clear, complete agreements, and clear, complete communication, right? Completing those agreements, completing that cycle.
So for everyone listening, here would be the thing that I would suggest you take away this week. As always, it can make sense. Some of the people you work with the most often, look at your email box today and who you're emailing back and forth with the most, and send them this episode. Set up a Zoom call where you guys are going to talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes. And in the next conversation with that person, you could say, that episode we listened to? What I want to do is make sure I know what agreement that we're in. And then you get a chance to play and practice this in each of those interactions throughout your week.
And if you just imagine, what does it look like? Who's doing what and by when? Or if you could actually write it down, this is a person taking this action to this specification and when, you got a good agreement. If you both agree on that, right? If you both agree on that agreement.
Yes. Oh, well, with that, we'll leave you guys off for the week, allow you to practice this. We always love spending time with you. And from Kari, from myself, from everybody at the Granger Network, we hope that this episode has been a contribution to your leadership impact. Thank you for tuning into Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. Subscribe now at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.